Hey, what's going on, everyone? This is Mitch. Good Thursday morning to you all. Hope you guys are waking up and feeling good out there this morning and having a wonderful start to your day and a great week out there so far. Merry Christmas. If you didn't watch last night's video, we did make a video last night, but I hope you folks had a very Merry Christmas. And in a way, it's almost kind of sad that it's over. I know a lot of people continue to celebrate Christmas, and we should, even after Christmas Day itself. But if I had to be honest with you guys, it's very difficult for me to look at all the decorations and stuff the same after the 25th pass. So Christmas Day itself is always just a little bit of a bittersweet feeling, if you will. I know some people will understand that, and some people will be like, man, what are you talking about? We got to celebrate all the way through like January 6th. But anyways, enough of that. Here to talk about the weather. Hope you folks are doing wonderful this morning. We're going to give you some updated information on the significant pattern change expected as we enter the new year, 2025, January. That's going to bring a below average temperatures for a good chunk of the country. Yes, we will have a winter storm risk at some point, I'm sure. We just got to figure out the time frame that's going to fit in, if it's going to happen. I do think it eventually will happen. We just got to figure out when and who's going to see it. But we will speak on what we're the most confident on first, which is these temperatures being well below normal as we get into the coldest time of the year, which is January. So we'll go over all model guidance. Everything will be sectioned out pretty well for you folks. And then we'll talk about today's weather, which could be quite active depending on where you live, especially the south central U.S. Tropical Tidbits is down this morning, I believe. So I actually have to use Weather Bell for my daily portion of the forecast video, and I always don't like doing that. Tropical Tidbits is so easy to maneuver around. The images are much bigger, but we'll make our way through it. If you guys have not subscribed, certainly consider doing that. Like the video if you like it. And if anybody has anything that I can pray about or pray over, please put it in the comments below. Let's get rocking and rolling this morning. So this is the latest Climate Prediction Center outlook. I showed this in last night's video if you didn't watch, but this was issued yesterday afternoon. We're starting to see more and more blue on the map. Now, the 8 to 14 day outlook is from January 2nd through January 8th. So they're going for below average temperatures for pretty much everybody in the southeast sections, the mid-south, deep south, all the way up to the mid-Atlantic, all the way up to portions of the Midwest. Confidence, drops a little bit more in this lighter shade of blue, but in this darker shade of blue right here, that's a 50% chance of temperatures being below normal. We still have this area up here in the northern plains, and then where there's just a void of color. This is, I would say, a 30. It says 36% chance of temperatures being near normal, but in the grayed out area, that's where they're going for temperatures being around normal. And obviously, the warmer colors, that's above average temperatures predicted in that January 2nd to 8th time frame. Now, we still have the weeks 3 to 4 outlook up. Now, this was issued the 20th last Friday. I think they update this every week, so we might get another updated version of this tomorrow. But I've showed this many times over the last several days. Between the January 4th and 17th time frame, going for below average temperatures for the central and eastern U.S., especially the middle of the country down to the southeastern portion of the country. This could tweak a little bit. So this is what we're looking like now. Now we'll kind of go back to the 8 to 14 day outlook, and I want to show you something. Precipitation in this time frame, it's around near normal in that gray area. Above normal chances of precipitation in the green. But, we're not seeing chances of really dry. Now, I would say the gray area is kind of one way or the other, right? But there's just a chance to see precipitation, a chance to not see precipitation, just kind of a chance of average precipitation, basically, which depending on where you live in this time frame, could be a half an inch of precipitation, could be an inch of precipitation. And let's just stop saying precipitation. So you get what I'm saying? Around near normal chances in this time frame with the cold air, well, you have a chance for some winter weather depending on where you live. Let's talk about what we're the most confident in. This is temperatures. Now we're going to start each one of these panels off with showing you with starting off New Year's Eve afternoon. And we're going to show you the Euro ensemble and the GFS ensemble. So this is the Euro ensemble starting off the 31st. Most of the country dealing with above average temperatures. Now it's beginning to moderate to cooler temperatures now, but Once we start to get into the first, we start to see below average anomalies showing up. So, the mid-south, deep south areas, the southeast, beginning to get below average temperatures creeping up, which matches what the Climate Prediction Center is saying. We continue to move this forward. We get into the second, we get into the third, and when you see that green colors right here, that is anywhere from 10 to 15 degrees below average temperature-wise for January 3rd standards, which, anytime in January, really anywhere, it doesn't matter where you live in the lower 48. If you got temperatures that are 10 to 15 degrees below average, that's pretty cold, even for the southeast. And that's what's showing up on the Euro Ensemble a few days into January. We're even starting to get below average temperatures showing up in the blue here. This is anywhere from 3, 4, 5, maybe 7 degrees below average up here in the upper Midwest. Above average temperatures showing up out west. And we continue to progress this forward. We get about, I would say, 9 to 10 days out. This is around the 3rd or 4th of January. Well below average temperatures are taking over now for a very large area. Stretching from Arkansas all the way to the mid-Atlantic, all the way to Florida. Well below average temperatures showing up. 10, 15, maybe as much as 20 degrees below average. Out west, you're above average temperature-wise. And you continue to move forward here. And when you start to see some of this like whitish purple color show up, that is anywhere from between 15 to 20, maybe even more, maybe like 25 degrees below average. And we continue to progress this forward, and it looks like we have a warming, kind of a moderation period, where it looks like the middle of the country begins to warm back up. And then do we have a reinforcing shot of cold air? It looks like out west and even the middle of the country is really starting to warm up again. But the east stays cold. Do we have another shot of cold air towards the end? I will admit, the latest Euro Ensemble, not near as cold with the second shot. But this is going to go back and forth. It's the very long range. We just got to see what's going to happen. I'm going to tell you what's causing that, when we compare the Euro Ensemble on this run to the Euro Ensemble I showed you in last night's video. Now, the GFS Ensemble, this is still running right now, but I believe we have most of the run. Same thing, we'll start off with the 31st. We get into the first. You start to see more blue on your screen. If you see blue in your state, that's where you have the chance of below average temperatures. Now you start to get into the third, to the fourth. And this is about the fourth right here. Well below average temperatures taking over a good chunk of the eastern U.S. except the far New England area. That green, like I said, 10 to 15 degrees below average. We continue to progress this forward. There's that little bit of a moderation period right here. You can see even some yellows and some oranges popping up on your screen. The eastern U.S. hangs on to below average temperatures. And then, this is as far as it goes, the GFS Ensemble 06Z run is still running. But if you continue to progress this forward, it looks like more cold air is dropping down from Canada. And this is the evening of the 3rd of January. And this is well below average temperatures beginning to drop back down to the country. And most of the country looks below average in this period. Now, this run has not completed yet, so it's still running. I'm not sure what it's going to show after we get closer to the day 15 time frame, but that's, like I've mentioned many times, a very unreliable time frame as it is. So now let's look at probably the thing that a lot of people want to see. I had some fun last night with the video because the GFS run was running, and we had a pretty crazy run showing a winter storm across a good section of the mid-Atlantic and even sections of the mid-south, southeast. What is the GFS showing us this morning? Well, we'll start off around the evening of the 31st. We ring in the new year, cold air dropping down. A storm system is cutting across the Midwest and Ohio Valley and eventually gets into southern Ontario, Quebec. Some cold air trying to ooze down, and then all of a sudden we're getting snow breaking out the 1st into the 2nd of January across Arkansas. Moisture right here is meeting up with the cold air in Arkansas, and then the colder side, which is Tennessee in this case, is seeing snow here. We'll just get a little bit closer to this and show you what it looks like for my Tennessee fans. Snowing even in northern Mississippi, maybe sections of northern Alabama. The snow is moving across Tennessee the 2nd, and then mainly just a cold rain for the Carolinas and Georgia. But this is kind of around the same system that was showing last night, except it was a few days further ahead. So this is happening a little bit quicker on the latest GFS run, and then it wants to bring a swath of heavy snow into Virginia, the Delmarva, D.C., and doesn't quite make it up to the northeast area, and then we get a lot of back in northwest flow that gets going here, and then we'll kind of switch it back to the U.S. view here, And is there anything else happening behind this? It looks like some energy's trying to dig right here. I can tell based off that 540 line, but nothing ever gets going. And then here comes that moderation period. Then are we going to get a reinforcing shot of cold air? It looks like we are, but the storm track shifts north because of a little bit of a ridge flex. And then we get a little bit of snow breaking out across the Midwest, Ohio Valley, into the Mid-Atlantic. And then we get a ton of cold air about to drop down towards the end of the GFS run. This is getting into the 7th, 8th, 9th time frame. But to me, that looks like a lot of cold and dry air. As you can tell, no storm system to be found. And then I'm not sure what happens after that. So now you can see energy embedded into this. I mean, one thing, and I talk about energy a lot. You know, a lot of times you'll see this map and you're like, man, I don't see any snow for the south or anything. But if you switch it and you look at the energy in the upper levels of the atmosphere, you can see energy. It's there. It's just not consolidating. It's not coming together. And that's a pretty nice shortwave right there. It's just extremely weak. It's positively tilted and doesn't have a chance to really wrap up. And that could potentially be a winter weather event for the south if it would just get its act together. But it doesn't. What about the Euro? All right, here we go. Here comes that system that kind of rings in, or rings out, if you will, the old year, and then rings in the new year here across the Northeast. This could cause some nasty weather the first day of the new year up here. But I really think that'll be mainly a rainmaker, except for the higher elevated regions of the Northeast. And then here comes a shot of cold air. Is there anything coming with this shot of cold air? Well, as we're getting into the 3rd of January, there's nothing. 4th, 5th, not seeing anything except just a bunch of lake effect snow, northwest flow stuff. And then here comes a clipper. Does this do anything with the southern stream? It does not. Just brings snow for the areas that's already seen it. And this is snow coming into, a little bit of snow into New England. But anyways, what we're seeing here is not really anything for the south. That's totally different than what we saw in yesterday's run, even the run before yesterday's run in the Euro. And at the very end of the run, it does bring down the cold air. But I can tell you, the Euro run altogether, and obviously I try to preach this a lot, and many people do out there in the weather community. You can't look at each run and make a conclusion off of it. But the latest Euro run is not a great run for winter weather fans, even as a whole. But you do look at the Euro ensemble here, and we see what this shows us. And we'll start off by showing you the central U.S., which does include a section of the Rockies. The morning of the 29th, here in the next few days. You can see how the snow mean, the average, begins to grow across the northern section of the country. But it doesn't grow significantly, which tells me I don't know if we're going to have any big systems over the middle of the country in regards to winter weather. We take it all the way to the end of the run. It's about the evening of the 9th of January, and there's not really a strong signal for anywhere south. There really isn't. Now, the GFS ensemble, same thing. We'll progress it forward here. There's a little signal right there across the Dakotas and the Midwest. And what happens after that, the 2nd, the 3rd? There's a little signal right here. And this is the system that we just showed you on the GFS. It's bringing snow for Arkansas, Tennessee. You can see how it shows up on the ensemble run too. Not that huge of a signal or anything like that. But we keep this going, and this is, well, I think it'll let us go out a little bit further. And it begins to blossom a little bit as we get into about a week into January. And this is as far out as it'll let us go, about 300 hours out into Tuesday morning, January the 7th. So you see a little bit of a higher signal a little bit further south. Now we look at the eastern U.S. for the Euro ensemble. Same thing, we'll start off around the New Year's time frame with a little bit of northwest flow snow showing up from the mountains of the Alps. Not a big deal. Some interior northeast snow showing up. Kind of just snow for the typical areas. I'll be honest, the main area we're watching is a little bit further south because, is the south going to get any winter weather from this? And we take it all the way to the 6th, not a really high signal for anywhere for the south or even the mid-Atlantic or heck, even the I-95 corridor. And then as we get a little bit deeper, like into the 7 to 10 day period into January, things begin to crash a little bit further south. A little bit of a higher signal begins to show up, but still not, I would argue it's not very high. Not trying to be a buzzkill either, but just keeping things realistic with you guys. I don't want to just jump on here and hype everything up and not tell you the things that might not work out. Well, we got about a week out into January 2nd. We get into January 3rd, 4th. There's that signal for maybe a system that slides across the Mississippi Valley into the Mid-South, into the Mid-Atlantic. And if we can get the Euro and the GFS and its ensembles to kind of lock in, then maybe that is something we're watching right as we get into the new year. But as we progress forward, and this is probably going to make a stop at some point, you can see it begins to grow even for the Mid-South, and then, you start to see it drop a little bit south. But, I mean, the signal even for the Carolinas has dropped off. It's not enough to call it a trend, and we only can go 300 hours out. But if we switch this and we look at the OOZ, it was about the same for the one last night. You can see it begins to crash down after we get past the first weekend of January, which I don't know if you remember, I've been saying a lot that I just don't think that storm system, the first weekend of January is going to be the storm system, if there is any, for areas in the deeper portions of the South. Now, maybe the Mid-South into the Mid-Atlantic, but I'm talking about like Shreveport to Jackson to Birmingham to Atlanta to Columbia to Charlotte to Raleigh. I mean, maybe once you get up to Raleigh, the upper portions of North Carolina, that could be different. But I've never liked that first weekend of January for areas further south. I never have. I just haven't. I don't know. I just don't get the feeling, the warm fuzzies about it. But, moving past that, I want to show you this graphic from Raleigh and talk about it for a minute or two. Raleigh, the National Weather Service out of Raleigh issued this graphic about 10 p.m. last night. And listen, I can't tell you how, I'm not going to use the words out of character this is, but how uncommon this is for a National Weather Service to really post a discussion about a period this far out. And really what threw me for a loop, and I'll read this, says models are indicating snowfall across much of North Carolina in January and February. We all know that the models give and take right into the possible winter storm. In recent years, getting the moisture and the cold air hasn't happened. Well, it happened this year. See below for more. And it does proceed to show you what I pretty much have shown you, the 8 to 14 day outlook, and this too. But one thing that really stood out to me is they posted the extended outlook. And then they posted this all over social media. And I don't even barely show this. This is basically the Euro extended. This is a 46-day snowfall forecast from this model. And of course, it's kind of blurry, but it shows snow all the way down into like the Carolinas, Alabama, Georgia. But this is notorious for just not being correct. So it's not a knock at them, but it does actually help me have a little bit more confidence that, maybe something is going to work out. When the National Weather Service are talking about it, then maybe something is going to actually work out this time. I just thought it was crazy that they posted that graphic. But just to kind of nerd out with you guys a little bit, and I'll start this off with the morning of the 31st and how the pattern evolves. What happens first is we get this energy that does slide off the Pacific. And this is the energy right here in the blue. Blue is energy, colder air, lower pressure, unsettled weather. The yellows, the oranges, the reds, that's higher pressure, ridge of high pressure, just warmer than average temperatures, a blocking mechanism. So basically what happens here is some energy gets pushed in from the Pacific. This develops into a storm system, and this probably is going to cut. It definitely is as we get into New Year's Eve, New Year's Day. This is going to bring a big weather maker for the 30th through the 31st and into New Year's. I think this could bring a little bit of severe weather, but there's not a lot of cold air coming down yet to meet up with all this fancy blue that you see. That's why I always say, just because you see blue, that doesn't mean that we have Arctic air right where the blue is and the greenish yellow color right here. That's not what this is symbolizing. Some people explain it that way, and I do too because it's the easiest way to explain it. But a lot of times, almost always, this does bring colder air. So as we progress forward, we get to that time frame that I've been talking about, and a lot of people have been talking about, and that is the first weekend of January. Now let's draw on this a little bit. Let's use black and click this. We have ridging building all the way up to Alaska at this point, and then a pretty broad ridge over the western U.S., over western Canada. We have this blocking mechanism up here in Greenland. This is what we call a negative NAO. A lot of blocking in the higher latitudes. Okay, this kind of dislodges cold air south, And I know you're seeing these warmer colors thinking, how is this cold air? Well, like I said, this doesn't always symbolize cold air. And warmer than average air in the Arctic is almost always going to be below average air for the lower 48. I mean, it's just the average temperatures, the higher you get up in the latitudes, well, the colder it gets. So this lodges cold air into the blue down here, which is energy, into an active jet, a dip in the jet stream, and, well, you know, you're going to have pieces of energy that slides down here off the Pacific. And even though we have this ridge right here, we're still getting energy kind of sliding in off the Pacific and riding down this ridge into this dip in the jet stream. Now, depending on the position of this jet, of this trough, you know, is it going to be way over here? Is it going to be where it's showing right here? Sometimes these pieces of energy can dive down further west enough to really strengthen and then develop into a powerful storm system, maybe somewhere into here, and then all of a sudden you get enough cold air diving down into this area, you get a big winter storm. And as you continue to move forward here, it's interesting because, you know, we get this reinforcing trough that drops down to more of a, what I think is going to be a colder time frame as we get past the first weekend of January. And all of a sudden, we're just getting a lot of energy clogged down into this region, colder air, and ridge is still spiking here. Oh, those are some ugly arrows, aren't they? But lower pressure chilling right here, an opportunity for energy, but this is more just telling me a lot of cold air dumping down to this region. Now, what concerns me is this right here. This is our Pacific jet, and admittedly, it has trended further this way. The more this trends that way, the more the position of this trough is going to be more to the east. Okay? You don't want it too far to the east if you're a winter weather fan. All you are going to get is just northwest flow stuff, northerly flow stuff. You need the position of this trough to dig down a little bit further down here. Therefore, the energy can dig a little bit further to the west. If it's like this, then you're probably going to get energy diving in like this, which makes all the difference. It's not going to have an opportunity to dig. Here, it would have the opportunity to dig and turn into a stronger storm system. And the closer you pull this Pacific jet, the more, like I said, obviously the ridge moves closer, the energy dives down further to the east. The more this air mass is just going to be fleeting. And you're going to end up flooding the lower 48 in North America with Pacific warm air, once again, which is what we've been plagued with over the last few winters. Now, I will say the very end of the Euro ensemble extends this trough back to the west, but that's way out there. So we just got to figure this one out. This is a tough one. And one day of model runs, you can't call that a trend if it goes one way. I don't know why people do that. They just do. I say this every time, and I don't have a whole lot of time to talk about this, but I will anyways. I say this every time, and this goes with anything in life. I'm not saying you have to take your emotions out what you love, which is my case, the weather. But you have to control your emotions. So for me, if you watched last night's video, I got very excited when I showed the 18Z model run. I did. But in my head, past all the high-end emotions of seeing all the snow over my house, I was like, you know what? This probably has a high likely chance to not happen, but it is cool to look at. And sure enough, it went away overnight. And you don't get burned, you don't get upset because you have those expectations. But believe it or not, there's a lot of people out there that look at one crazy fancy model run, tell everybody and their brother's, uncle's, cousin's dog that it's going to snow on that day. And then when the model turns around and shows something else the next run, they get ticked off. And that happens to people enough to where they just constantly just are negative about the weather. And I know if you're thinking and you're not active in the weather community, you're probably thinking, does people really get this upset about the weather? They do. They do. People bring their emotions way too deep into weather to the point where they just get pissed off when it doesn't work out in their favor. And then they just turn into what I call, and what many people know as of, a negative Nancy. And, basically it doesn't matter what you show them, they're going to go towards the negative route. So you got to not take your emotions out of things you love, but you have to have controlled emotion And that's what I believe in. So anyways, enough of that talk. And this is energy in the atmosphere. Euro Ensemble shows a lot of energy getting into the first weekend of January. I just don't think that it's digging down enough, and it's not tapping into any kind of southern stream energy. But as you move forward, you might start to get some digging of this energy a little bit more, and then that first wave of energy moves away, and then the trough tries to dig down again, and then that's when you start to see some of this stuff over here. This is some southern stream energy, and maybe we can get some phasing of the northern stream and the southern stream as we get a little bit deeper into January. I've always liked past the first weekend of January, not the first weekend of January. That could work out for some people, but I've always liked past the first weekend of January. So moving into today's forecast, we got a lot of energy out west. A lot of snow in the higher elevations, just going to get heavier in the Sierra Nevada. This little spin right here is delivering some high winds for the Pacific Northwest. And then we just got some scattered moisture as a ridge begins to build across, a good chunk of the country. Just some scattered rain showers, very broad in nature here. But a lot of energy out west. As far as watches, warnings, and advisories, we do, good old avalanche warning. But anyways, we have a lot of winter weather advisories out in the purple, winter storm warnings in the pink. We have some winter weather advisories for a little bit of light freezing rain across areas of Wisconsin, even a winter weather advisory across Nebraska, and then just some special weather statements scattered about. Now, the big storyline for today's weather is severe weather. We haven't had an active fall severe weather season or even early winter severe weather season. Well, this could upgrade to an enhanced risk. But right now, we have a slight risk, level 2 out of 5. Might be rusty in talking about severe weather. I haven't talked about it in a while. I hadn't had to. From Dallas to almost Little Rock, but not quite, includes southwest Arkansas, all the way down to Alexandria, Shreveport, Beaumont, Galveston, Houston, Victoria, Austin. Level 2 out of 5 risk of severe weather. Tornado threat, there is a 5% risk in the brown area of a tornado within 25 miles in a given location. The green, that's a 2% risk. Wind threat, 15% risk of winds exceeding 55 to 60 miles per hour if you live in that yellow area. And then the hail threat shifted a little bit further south and east, and west. If you live in that yellow area, that's where you have a 15% risk of hail exceeding 1 inch in diameter or larger. And then we will kind of zoom out, and I will talk about the excessive rainfall outlook. And there is a slight risk in this yellow area, some of the same areas impacted by severe weather today, that has a 15% risk of rainfall exceeding flash flood guidance within 25 miles in a given location. So some active weather today as far as severe and flooding. Now, Tropical Tidbits is down, so I only can show you Weather Bell. But for the immediate southeast, just some scattered showers. Maybe some thunderstorms, but I think mainly just around the southeast today, just showers anywhere. Especially as we get into the overnight hours for like the Carolina, South Carolina could get some showers, maybe even some storms moving onshore. And then we got some storms scooting across Mississippi. All the storms I'm about to talk about for the Texas, Louisiana, Arkansas is going to move into Mississippi into the overnight hours. Moving across the Mississippi River around midnight, points, I would say a couple hours after maybe. So it's going to be stormy from Jackson over to Meridian all the way into tomorrow morning. So the Northeast, a very quiet weather today. The graphic would pull up. Just cold still. Very cold start this morning, and could wake up to a little bit of freezing drizzle in western New York tomorrow. But, a pretty quiet day. Now, this is where it's going to be very active. Look at the storms abroad. Look at everything. Look at all those storms in eastern Texas. You're going to get a lot of rain, strong to severe storms, capable of producing all hazards. And then this huge chunk of rain will move into Arkansas, eastern Oklahoma. Later this evening, some storms will rush through Louisiana. And just to go on and just dive down here and take a closer look at this. Look at these storms. They are very clustered up. You see some that have that hook to them. There's going to be obviously people storm chasing this today, but this is going to be a messy storm chase. And it's dangerous for people who live here too, because this will likely be a tornado setup where you're not going to really see them. They'll be rain wrapped more than likely. But there's just a lot of clustering of storms in this area. But listen, I know this just, like I said, looks very kind of congealed together. But there could be tornadoes embedded in this setup. And just taking a closer look at Louisiana, which I'm concerned about too, really extreme eastern Texas, western Louisiana. If you look down here at the tail end of this line of storms, you see how all these kind of have like a kidney bean look to them? This is where I'm concerned about tornadoes. And this is around 6 o'clock here, just north of Houston, if you live in this area of eastern Texas. And then eventually this will get all the way close to like Lake Charles later this evening. You got to be careful with these storms tonight, guys. And, you know, if you look at the updraft velocity swath, which tells us where some of these storms could be spinning, it really likes this area of eastern Texas into Louisiana. Where you see these highlight areas, this is where this one particular model run likes the idea of rotating thunderstorms. So please be aware of that today. The upper Midwest, we're going to deal with some of this freezing rain, especially in Wisconsin, over the next several hours. This could make its way into the UP and Michigan as in the way of some freezing drizzle all the way into this evening. And then, you know, it could last into the overnight hours. It could still have pockets of freezing rain all the way into tomorrow morning. But, you know, between now and the entirety of this event, a few 1/100ths of an inch of ice. Someone could squeeze in a 1/10 of an inch of ice. So just be aware of this freezing rain today. And then out west, a lot of moisture moving in, and then a huge chunk of moisture will begin to really overspread the valleys of Oregon, California, and Washington will get a lot of rain. The higher elevations of the Cascades, Sierra Nevada, a ton of snow. This will overspread into Nevada, the rest of Oregon and Washington, eventually into Idaho, tomorrow morning into Utah, all the way across the central Rockies. And then another system, which will be warmer, will begin to overspread into the Pacific Northwest as we get closer to the end of this week. But this is snowfall between now and tomorrow morning. Into Saturday morning. Feet of snow in the higher elevations. Not a big snowfall maker for those lower elevated regions like Salt Lake City, like Seattle, like Eugene, Portland, Denver. This is just confined still to the higher elevations. We've yet to have any kind of big winter weather events besides Denver. They had it in November for any of those lower elevated regions. But temperatures in the eastern U.S., still another cold day in the northeast. Some cold air damming still affecting areas all the way down to Atlanta. A little bit of a surge of warm air west of the Alps all the way into the Ohio Valley. And then this is what the western looks like, western U.S. So that's all I got, guys. Thank y'all for tuning in. God bless all y'all, and have a wonderful day.